So how can you transfer a copyright? Well, a copyright is a personal property right. It can be transferred just like title to your car, just like title to your house. It does have to be in writing, so it needs to be a contract. It needs to be a written contract. It needs to be signed by the owner of the copyright or their authorized agent. And it can also be bequeathed upon death. So if you have a copyright and you die, it will pass through your will, or it will pass to your relatives if you don't have a will. State law provisions also apply because it is a property right, just like selling your car or selling your house. You're actually selling a personal property right, and so there may be other state law things that apply. But the big thing is it needs to be a contract, it needs to be in writing. If somebody just sold you a picture, they probably just sold you that actual picture and not the copyright, unless you have it in writing that you got the copyright. So that just goes back to the example of making the coffee table book from the pictures. Just be careful. Make sure that you have it in writing. Make sure you have permission from the photographer or the painter or whatever you want to take and use. So what does copyright protect? Copyright gives the copyright owner the exclusive right to reproduce the work or make copies. So remember that textbook, or not textbook, but Harry Potter book? You can take the textbook and you can resell that book, but you can't make copies of it. Same with college textbook. You can't make copies and distribute it to your class. Copyright also gives the copyright owner the right to prepare derivative works, which, for example, is taking the photographs and putting them into combining them into a coffee table book, or taking the Harry Potter story and branching off and having those characters go do something else. That would be considered a derivative work. Also gives the copyright owner the exclusive right to distribute copies and perform or display that work. There's some limits on copyrights. Copyright is pretty broad, but there are some limits on it, and the biggest or probably most well-known limit on copyright is the doctrine of fair use. And that's a judicially or court-created limit on copyright, and it does allow people to take copyrightable work for purposes, for example, of criticizing it. For example, somebody may have written a book and the reviewer wants to write a review about the book and they want to criticize it, so they actually copy a paragraph and they put it in the middle of their review and they say, this makes absolutely no sense what this author wrote. That might be considered fair use. To comment on something, for example, in the news, for teaching and research, you may be able to take an article and you may be able to take a portion of that article, not necessarily the whole article, but a portion of that article, and say, well, so-and-so says this, and you put a copy of a couple paragraphs of what they're talking about. And then this other researcher said this, and then you're comparing it now. That might be considered fair use. The courts are generally going to look at, is it for commercial or non-profit? Are you going to make a profit off of it? In other words, are you copying this and putting it out there and selling it? Probably not going to be fair use. Or, like I said, are you using it in a classroom where you're comparing portions of what somebody wrote for educational purposes? That may be considered fair use. They're also going to look at how much did you copy. Did you copy the whole textbook and give it to all the students in your class, or did you take a paragraph or a section out of the book and put it up there for them to compare during class? Generally, you don't want to rely on the doctrine of fair use. You don't want to copy something, put it in your text, and say, oh, I'm just using it under fair use. First of all, you don't want to have to go to court and prove that it was just fair use. There's no black and white line as this is fair use and this is not, so the court may decide against you and then you find yourself on the wrong end of an infringement suit.